The conference room at Patterson and Cole law offices went dead silent. My father's hand froze on his water glass. Marcus, my older brother, stopped mid-laugh. His wife Jennifer's smile cracked like cheap porcelain. 18 family members who'd been nodding along suddenly looked at each other with that particular kind of confusion that comes right before panic. The attorney, Mr. Patterson, adjusted his reading glasses and glanced down at the will he'd just finished presenting. Marcus had inherited everything. The pharmaceutical company Dad built over 30 years, the vacation home in Aspen, the investment portfolio worth 8 figures, even the vintage car collection Dad always said would go to whoever appreciated it most. I got a single line. To my daughter Olivia, I leave my gratitude for her independence and my hope that she continues to thrive on her own merit. That was it, gratitude and hope. You can't deposit those at a bank. The room had erupted in congratulations. Aunts kissed Marcus's cheeks, cousins clapped his shoulders. Jennifer beamed like she'd personally earned every dollar. Someone popped champagne even though we were in a law office at 2 p.m. My mother sat in the corner with tissues pressed to her eyes, whispering about how proud she was that Marcus would carry on the family legacy. Nobody looked at me, not even a sympathetic glance. Just relief that the uncomfortable daughter who'd moved across the country was finally officially out of the picture. That's when I'd spoken. 5 words that cut through the celebration like a scalpel. Dad's face drained of color. I watched it happen in real time, starting from his forehead and working down to his collar. Marcus finally turned to look at me, really look at me, for the first time since I'd walked into the room. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. I kept my eyes on Dad. "The company, Patterson Pharmaceuticals. You don't actually own it anymore, do you, Dad?" Mr. Patterson set down the will. "Ms. Patterson, if you have questions about the estate, we can address them after—" "I don't have questions about the estate," I interrupted, still watching my father. "I have questions about what my father chose not to include in the estate. Specifically, the 92% controlling interest in Patterson Pharmaceuticals that he transferred to a Delaware holding company 3 years ago." Mom's tissue fell from her hand. Marcus stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. Jennifer grabbed his arm like she was trying to anchor him to reality. Dad finally found his voice. "Olivia, this isn't the time." "No?" I opened the leather portfolio I'd been holding on my lap the entire meeting. "When is the time? Before or after Marcus tries to walk into the executive suite Monday morning and realizes he doesn't have access?" I pulled out the first document. Corporate filing from the state of Delaware dated 3 years and 2 months prior. Formation of PPC Holdings, LLC. Registered agent, Harrison and Way Corporate Services. Members listed, 1. I slid it across the table. Marcus snatched it up. His eyes moved across the page, then stopped. His lips moved like he was trying to make the words say something different. "This says the sole member is—" He looked up at me. "This is fake." "It's not," I said calmly. "Your father created that holding company and transferred his shares 90 days before his first cancer diagnosis. The one he didn't tell anyone about until 6 months later when the treatment stopped working." The room went from silent to suffocating. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the vents. Mom stood up, her voice shaking. "Cancer? What cancer? He had a heart condition." "He had both," I said. "The heart condition came after the chemotherapy damaged his cardiac tissue. But the cancer came first, stage 3 pancreatic. He knew the survival rates. He knew what he was doing." Dad's head dropped. He pressed both palms against the table like he was trying to keep from falling through the floor. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. "Mr. Patterson, is this accurate?" My father didn't answer. I pulled out the second document. Transfer agreement. Patterson Pharmaceuticals shares, all classes, 92% of outstanding stock, moved from Samuel R. Patterson individually to PPC Holdings, LLC. Signed, notarized, filed with the SEC. He moved it out of his personal name, I continued. That means it was never part of his probate estate, which means this will doesn't control it. Marcus slammed the document down. "Then who owns it now? The holding company doesn't just... He stopped. His face changed. No. Yes, I said. I pulled out the third document. Operating Agreement for PPC Holdings, LLC. Article 7, Succession. Upon the death of the original member, all membership interest shall transfer automatically to the named successor member, as designated in the attached assignment. I flipped to the final page and held it up so everyone could see the signature line. Successor member, Olivia Marie Patterson. Jennifer made a sound like air escaping from a tire. Mom sat back down hard. Marcus just stared, his mouth opening and closing without sound. I own the company, I said. I have since the moment Dad's heart stopped. The holding company operating agreement made it automatic. No probate, no will, no vote. Just a clean transfer that happened the second he was declared dead. Before I tell you how we got here, how my father secretly handed me a pharmaceutical empire worth $400 million without telling anyone, and why 18 family members are about to realize they bet on the wrong child, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated by people who thought they knew your worth. Because what happened next made every single person in that room regret not paying attention to the daughter they wrote off. Now let me take you back to where this really started. My name is Olivia Patterson, and for most of my life, I was the daughter nobody planned for. Marcus was born first, obvious and loud and exactly what my parents wanted. A son, an heir, someone to carry the Patterson name forward with the kind of swagger that makes investors sign checks and board members nod along. By the time he was 5, Dad was already bringing him to the office, letting him sit in the big leather chair, teaching him to shake hands like he meant it. I came along 3 years later. The second child nobody asked for. Mom always told the story like it was charming. We were done having kids, but God had other plans. Everyone would laugh. I learned early that being an unexpected blessing is just a polite way of saying you weren't part of the design. Marcus played football. I played piano in the practice room where nobody could hear. Marcus got accepted to Princeton. I got a full scholarship to MIT. Dad framed Marcus's acceptance letter. He asked if I was sure I wanted to go all the way up there when there were perfectly good schools closer to home. I went anyway. At MIT, I studied biochemical engineering with a focus on drug development. I spent 4 years learning how pharmaceutical compounds actually work, how clinical trials are structured, how FDA approval processes can make or break a company. I graduated summa cum laude and got recruited by 3 different pharma giants before I even walked across the stage. I chose the one in San Francisco, as far from Philadelphia as I could get without leaving the country. Dad called twice that year, both times to ask if I'd heard from Marcus lately. Marcus, meanwhile, got his MBA from Wharton and walked straight into a VP position at Patterson Pharmaceuticals. Not because he'd earned it, because his name was already on the building. He spent 5 years learning to play golf with distributors and schmooze investors at charity dinners. He was good at it. Everyone said so. Marcus really knows how to work a room. Nobody ever asked if he knew how to read a clinical trial protocol or spot a bad compound before it cost millions and failed development. They didn't need to ask. That wasn't his job. His job was to look good doing Dad's job until Dad retired. That was the plan. Everyone knew it. Marcus knew it. Jennifer knew it when she married him in that ridiculous $30,000 wedding where I was technically a bridesmaid, but spent most of the reception eating cake alone at a table near the kitchen. I stopped coming home for holidays after that. Mom would send guilt-heavy emails. It's not the same without you. Dad would send nothing. Marcus would post family photos on social media with captions like, "The Patterson legacy continues," and nobody seemed to notice I wasn't in the frame. I was fine with it. I built a life in San Francisco that had nothing to do with pharmaceutical dynasties or family expectations. I dated a software engineer named David who'd never heard of Patterson Pharmaceuticals. I adopted a rescue dog named Watson. I took weekends in Napa and hiked Muir Woods and learned what it felt like to be valued for what I actually knew instead of who I was related to. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed with a phone call I almost didn't answer. It was a Tuesday night. I was working late at the lab, reviewing data from a failed trial on a cardiac medication we'd spent 2 years developing. My phone buzzed with a Philadelphia number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Olivia, my father's voice. Quiet, strained. I need you to come home. I hadn't heard from him in 14 months. What's wrong? I'm sick. A pause. It's serious. I need to talk to you about the company. Talk to Marcus, I said automatically. He's the one who... I need to talk to you, he repeated. Please, this weekend. Don't tell your mother, don't tell your brother, just come. He hung up before I could ask anything else. I flew home that Friday. Dad picked me up from the airport himself, which should have been my first clue something was catastrophically wrong. Samuel Patterson didn't do his own airport runs. He had drivers for that. He looked terrible, thin, gray, moving like every step hurt. We didn't go to the house. We drove straight to his office downtown. The building was empty, lights off except for his corner suite. He unlocked the door and led me inside like we were committing a crime. I have pancreatic cancer, he said before we even sat down. Stage 3, they caught it late. Treatment options are limited. I felt my stomach drop. Dad, I'm not telling you for sympathy, he cut me off. I'm telling you because I need to make decisions, and I need you to understand why. He pulled out a file folder, thick, labeled. He slid it across his desk. I built this company from nothing, he said. 32 years. Every drug we've developed, every trial we've run, every FDA approval, I was there. I know how it works. I know what it takes. I opened the folder, financial statements, stock certificates, corporate structure diagrams. Marcus doesn't, Dad continued. He's good at playing the part. He can close a deal over drinks and make investors feel confident. But he doesn't understand the science. He doesn't understand development timelines or regulatory risk. Last month, he tried to convince the board to fast-track a hypertension drug that has liver toxicity signals in the Phase 2 data. I looked up. Did he read the safety reports? He didn't read past the executive summary. Dad's voice was flat. If I die and he takes control, he'll run this company into the ground in 5 years. Either through a bad drug that gets people killed, or through deals that look good but destroy our research pipeline. So fire him, I said. I can't. He leaned back in his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Your mother would never forgive me. The family would implode. The board expects him to succeed me. If I cut him out now, it'll look like instability. Stock price tanks. Investors bolt. Everything I built falls apart anyway. Then what are you asking me? He met my eyes. I'm asking you to take it. Quietly, legally. In a way that doesn't blow up until I'm gone and can't be blamed. That's when he explained the plan. A Delaware holding company, a private transfer of shares outside probate, an operating agreement that designates me as successor member with automatic rights upon his death. Marcus would inherit everything in the will, the house, the cars, the liquid assets, enough that nobody would question it. But the company, the actual operating business, would come to me through a structure nobody was watching. I need someone who understands what we actually do, he said. Someone who knows the difference between a promising compound and a disaster waiting to happen. Someone who earned their credentials instead of inheriting them. I should have said no. I should have walked out. But he looked at me with something I'd never seen from him before. Respect. You're the one who was supposed to do this, he said quietly. I just didn't realize it until it was almost too late. We spent the next 6 weeks building the structure, late-night meetings with corporate attorneys in Delaware, paperwork signed in offices I flew to on red-eyes, share transfers filed quietly with the SEC under legal clauses most people never read. Dad made me promise 2 things: never tell anyone until he was gone, and never let Marcus run the company into the ground. I kept both promises. Dad announced his illness 4 months later, framing it as a heart condition that developed suddenly. The cancer became complications that nobody questioned. He kept working, kept Marcus in his VP role, kept pretending everything was going according to plan. Mom never knew. Marcus never suspected. The board never asked questions. And when Dad died 6 months ago, the will went to probate exactly as written. Marcus got the estate. I got a line about gratitude. Nobody thought to check what wasn't in the estate. Nobody except me. The conference room at Patterson and Cole erupted like I'd thrown a grenade into the middle of the table. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing the operating agreement from my hands. "This is fraud. You manipulated him. He was dying. He wasn't thinking clearly." "He had full mental capacity," I said evenly. "The documents were signed and filed when he was still undergoing treatment and passing cognitive assessments for the board. There are medical records confirming it." Jennifer stood up, her voice shrill. "You can't just steal a company." "I didn't steal anything. It was given to me, legally." I pulled out another document. Articles of incorporation for PPC Holdings show I'm listed as the manager with full operational authority. That includes firing and hiring decisions, capital allocation, and board appointments. Marcus's face went from pale to purple. "You're going to fire me." "Immediately," I confirmed. "Effective Monday morning. Security will have your badge deactivated and your office cleared by noon." Mom finally found her voice, trembling and thick with tears. "How could you do this? To your own brother? To this family?" I turned to her. "How could Dad leave me a single line in his will while giving Marcus everything? Did you ask that question, or were you too relieved that the daughter you never wanted wasn't going to be a problem anymore?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Don't you dare!" Marcus snarled. "Don't you dare make this about you feeling sorry for yourself. We included you. We invited you. You're the one who left." "I left because I was never wanted here," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "You got the corner office handed to you. I got asked why I couldn't just be happy for you. You got praised for showing up. I got a scholarship to MIT, and Dad asked if I was sure I wanted to go that far away. Do you know what that feels like? To achieve something real and have your own father question whether it was the right choice?" Marcus threw the papers down. "So this is revenge? You ruin our lives because Daddy didn't hug you enough?" "This isn't revenge," I shot back. "This is what Dad wanted. He chose me because I earned the right to run this company. You were just born first." "He was dying," Marcus roared. "You took advantage of him when he was vulnerable." "He was lucid," I said coldly, "and he knew exactly what you'd do if you got control. He told me about the hypertension drug, the one you wanted to push through even though the Phase 2 data showed liver toxicity." The room went quiet again. Several board members who'd come for the will reading exchanged glances. Marcus's jaw worked. "That data was inconclusive. It showed elevated ALT levels in 43% of participants," I said. "That's not inconclusive. That's a safety signal you ignored because you don't actually read the reports. You read the summaries and make gut calls based on market opportunity." "That's how business works," Marcus said. "Not in pharmaceuticals." I stood up, gathering my documents. "In pharmaceuticals, gut calls kill people, and then they kill companies. Dad knew that. That's why he made sure you'd never get the chance." Mr. Patterson, the attorney, cleared his throat. "Ms. Patterson, these documents appear to be in order, but I'll need to verify whatever you want," I said. "I have copies of everything filed with the Delaware Secretary of State, the SEC, and the Corporate Records Office. I have emails from Dad outlining his intent. I have medical records proving his capacity at the time of signing. I have testimony from the attorneys who structured the holding company. And I have a board meeting scheduled for Monday morning where I'll be presenting my transition plan." I turned back to Marcus. "You can fight this if you want. Hire lawyers. Burn through whatever inheritance you actually got. Drag this out for years. But you'll lose, because everything was done correctly and Dad made absolutely sure there were no loopholes." His hands were shaking. Jennifer had started crying, loud gasping sobs that nobody was comforting. Mom stood up, her voice breaking. "Your father would be ashamed of you." That one hit harder than I expected. I felt it in my chest like a physical weight. But I didn't let it show. "No," I said quietly. "He wouldn't." Because this is exactly what he planned. He was ashamed that it took him so long to see what I could do. He told me that himself. I picked up my portfolio and walked toward the door. Olivia. Dad's voice, barely a whisper. I stopped but didn't turn around. Did you ever love us? He asked. Or was it always just about proving you were better? I looked back at him over my shoulder. I loved you enough to build a life where I didn't need you. That's more than you ever gave me. I walked out. Behind me, someone started screaming. I think it was Jennifer. Maybe Mom. I didn't stay to find out. In the parking garage, I sat in my rental car for 10 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, breathing carefully. My phone started buzzing. Texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Missed calls from aunts. A voicemail from Marcus that I deleted without listening. I started the car and drove to the hotel. Checked in under a fake name. Ordered room service I didn't eat. And waited for Monday. Monday morning arrived with the kind of cold clarity that comes after burning bridges you can't rebuild. I wore the navy suit I'd bought specifically for this. Hair pulled back. No jewelry except the watch Dad had given me when I graduated MIT. The one he'd handed me without ceremony, saying only, "You'll need this for board meetings someday." I'd thought he was being sarcastic. Turns out he was being prophetic. The Patterson Pharmaceuticals building sat in downtown Philadelphia like a glass monument to everything my family had built. 32 floors. Dad's name in chrome letters above the entrance. I'd been inside maybe a dozen times in my entire life, always as a visitor, never as someone who belonged. Today, I walked in as the owner. Security recognized me from the shareholder database. The guard's expression flickered with confusion. He'd probably expected Marcus, but he buzzed me through. I took the elevator to the top floor where the executive suite sprawled across 3,000 square feet of corner offices and conference rooms. Marcus's assistant, a woman named Diane, who'd worked for the family for 15 years, stood up from her desk as I approached. Her face was carefully neutral. "Ms. Patterson," she said, "we weren't expecting you." "Is Marcus in?" I asked. "He's in his office, but he's asked not to be disturbed." "That's fine. I'm not here to disturb him. I'm here to fire him." Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I walked past her desk and opened Marcus's door without knocking. He was standing by the window, looking out over the city, hands in his pockets. He didn't turn around when I entered. "I knew you'd come," he said. "Then you know why I'm here." "To humiliate me in person. Twist the knife a little deeper." His voice was flat, empty. "Congratulations, you won." I set my briefcase on his desk. "This isn't about winning, isn't it?" He finally turned around. He looked like he hadn't slept. Red eyes, wrinkled shirt. The golden boy persona cracked down the middle. "You got what you wanted. The company, the power, the chance to prove you're better than me, so go ahead, fire me, take everything, just don't pretend it's not personal." I pulled out the termination letter and laid it on his desk. Standard corporate language, effective immediately. Severance package equivalent to 6 months' salary. Benefits through the end of the quarter. "You're right," I said. "It is personal, but not the way you think." He picked up the letter, scanned it, then tossed it back down. "Severance. How generous. What's 6 months' salary when you're taking $400 million? "I'm not taking anything. I already own it, and that severance is more than you'd give anyone else you fired. So I should be grateful?" His laugh was bitter. "Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for destroying my career with such compassion." "Your career was destroying this company," I said. "That hypertension drug you wanted to push. I pulled the full Phase 2 data over the weekend. Liver toxicity signals in 43% of participants. 3 cases of severe hepatotoxicity requiring hospitalization. If that drug had gone to Phase 3 and those numbers held, people would have died. And when the FDA came calling, it wouldn't have been just your career that ended. It would have been every employee in this building." "We would have caught it in Phase 3, Marcus said. "You weren't even looking at the Phase 2 data," I countered. "You read a 2-page executive summary and made a call based on market size. That's not pharmaceutical development, that's gambling with people's lives." He slumped into his chair. Dad taught me to look at the big picture, to see opportunities. Dad also taught you that science comes first. You just didn't listen to that part. Because I'm not a scientist! The words burst out of him like they'd been trapped for years. I'm not you, Olivia. I can't read clinical trial protocols and spot problems in the data. I don't have your degrees or your brain or your ability to make everything look easy. I'm just the guy who's good at handshakes and golf and making investors feel confident. That's all I ever was. And it was supposed to be enough. For the first time since the reading, I saw him clearly. Not as the brother who'd taken everything, but as someone who'd been handed a role he couldn't actually perform and told his entire life it was his destiny. It wasn't enough for Dad, I said quietly. And somewhere deep down you knew that. He put his head in his hands. I tried. I really did try. I know. Then why didn't he just tell me? His voice cracked. Why go through this whole charade? Why let me think I was going to inherit everything and then pull the rug out? Because he loved you, I said, and he didn't know how to tell you that you weren't right for this without breaking your heart. So he broke mine instead by making me the bad guy who takes it away. Marcus looked up at me. Do you hate him for that? I thought about it. Sometimes, but mostly I just wish he'd been honest with both of us from the start. He nodded slowly. What happens now? You leave. You take your severance. You figure out what you're actually good at instead of what you were told you should be. I paused. And maybe someday we can have coffee without lawyers present. Maybe, he said, but we both knew it was a lie. I left him in his office and went to the boardroom where 12 board members were waiting. Half of them had been appointed by Dad. The other half were independent directors elected by shareholders. All of them looked extremely uncomfortable. I took Dad's old seat at the head of the table and placed my briefcase down. Good morning, I said. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Olivia Patterson. I hold a controlling 92% interest in this company through PPC Holdings, LLC, which I inherited upon my father's death, pursuant to a transfer he made 3 years ago. I'm here to assume the role of CEO and begin a comprehensive operational review. One of the independent directors, a man named Caldwell, spoke first. Ms. Patterson, with all due respect, we weren't informed of any ownership changes. The proxy statements show your father as majority shareholder at the time of his death. Those proxy statements are outdated, I said. The transfer occurred through a private holding company that wasn't required to be disclosed until controlling interest changed hands. That change occurred 6 days ago. SEC filings went out this morning. Another director, a woman named Chen, leaned forward. What are your qualifications? I'd been waiting for that question. MIT, Biochemical Engineering, summa cum laude. 8 years at Bressler Pharmaceuticals in San Francisco, most recently as Senior Director of Clinical Development. I've overseen 12 clinical trials from Phase 1 through FDA submission. 3 resulted in approved drugs currently on the market. 2 others are in late-stage review. My safety record is spotless. The room was quiet. Chen nodded slowly. I'm also implementing immediate changes, I continued. First, all ongoing trials will undergo independent safety review within 30 days. Second, we're halting development on the hypertension compound, pending complete analysis of the Phase 2 liver toxicity signals. Third, I'm bringing in an external consulting firm to audit our development pipeline and regulatory compliance practices. Caldwell cleared his throat. That's aggressive. That's necessary, I said. My father built this company on scientific integrity. That standard has slipped. We're going to restore it. And what about Marcus? Another director asked. He's been with us for 5 years. Marcus has been terminated, I said flatly. He lacks the technical expertise to evaluate clinical data and was pushing for decisions that would have exposed this company to significant liability. His severance is generous. His departure is non-negotiable. No one argued. We spent the next 3 hours going through pipelines, financials, staffing, and strategic priorities. By noon, I'd established operational control. By 2, I'd scheduled one-on-ones with every department head. By 4, word had spread through the building that Dad's daughter, the one nobody remembered, was now in charge. At 6, I sat alone in Dad's old office. Now my office. It smelled like leather and old coffee. His degrees were still on the wall, his books still on the shelves. There was an envelope taped to the bottom of his desk drawer. I'd found it when I was looking for pens. My name on the front. His handwriting. I opened it. Olivia, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you fought the battle I couldn't fight while I was alive. I'm sorry I put you in this position. I'm sorry I didn't have the courage to choose you publicly when it would have mattered. I told myself I was protecting the family. The truth is, I was protecting myself from their disappointment. You were always the one who should have had this. Not because you're smarter, though you are, but because you understand what matters. Marcus sees money. You see responsibility. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope someday you'll understand why I did it this way. And I hope you'll build something even better than what I left. Love, Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it, put it back in the envelope, and locked it in my desk. 3 months have passed since that Monday. Marcus moved to Charlotte and started working at a mid-sized investment firm. He's good at it, from what I hear. Better than he ever was at pharmaceutical development. Jennifer divorced him 8 weeks after the will reading. Took half of whatever he'd inherited and disappeared. Mom stopped speaking to me entirely. I sent flowers on her birthday. She sent them back. The rest of the family chose sides. Most chose Marcus. A few cousins sent awkward emails congratulating me on the company. I didn't respond. Patterson Pharmaceuticals is thriving. The safety reviews caught 2 more problematic compounds that would have failed in Phase 3. We've redirected resources to 3 promising treatments for autoimmune disorders. Our stock price has climbed 18%. Industry publications are calling it a renaissance. I hired Dylan as VP of Operations. He's the only one in the family who called after the meeting and said, "I always knew it should have been you." The hypertension drug was officially discontinued. Internal analysis confirmed the liver toxicity would have killed the trial and potentially harmed patients. Marcus sent one text. "I guess you were right." I didn't respond. Some nights I sit in my office and look out over the city, the same view Dad had for 30 years, and wonder if he knew how lonely this would be. Probably. He made the same choice I did. Prioritized the work over the relationships that wanted him to fail at it. I don't regret taking the company. I regret that it had to happen the way it did. I regret that my father couldn't just choose me while he was alive. I regret that Marcus had to lose his dream so I could fulfill mine. But I don't regret the choice. Because every day I make decisions that protect patients instead of profits. Every trial I oversee follows the science instead of the market. Every drug we develop has to meet a standard that Marcus would have compromised. That's what Dad wanted. Not a perfect daughter. Not a grateful son. Just someone who would do the work right. And that's what I do. If you've ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right, drop a comment below. If you've ever been underestimated and then proven everyone wrong, hit that like button. Because sometimes the hardest thing isn't winning, it's living with what winning costs. My name is Olivia Patterson. I own a pharmaceutical company worth $400 million. And I earned every single dollar of it, even if nobody will ever see it that way. Some bridges you burn, some doors you close, and some families you leave behind because the person you need to become can't fit in the box they built for you. This is where my story ends. Or maybe it's where it finally begins.